Good morning. Staff ready? All right. I'm calling to order the May 2nd, 2019 meeting of the Architectural Review Board of the City of Palo Alto. Could you call the roll, please?
Yes, good morning, Chair Firth.
Here.
Vice Chair Balte.
Present.
Board Member Liu.
Present.
Board Member Hirsch. And Board Member Thompson.
Present.
Thank you, all present.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is oral communications. This is time for any member of the public to speak on an item not on our agenda. I have no speaker cards. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on a matter not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we'll go on to the next matter. Agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Are there any? Hearing none, city official reports. Transmittal of the ARB meeting schedule and attendance record, tentative future agendas, and recent project decisions.
Yes, so you'll see in attachment A, we have canceled the July 4th meeting. We don't think we need a special meeting at this time, so we'll leave the schedule as such. And
I just wanted to note that I believe I will be here on June 20th.
Okay. Do you want me to change that on here?
Yes, please.
Okay. That would be great. And then for May 2nd, for the next hearing, that is not correct. I believe it's May 16th. We have two potential items, 4256 El Camino, which is a new hotel project, and then 567 Homer, which is 3 residential units. It's possible one of those items may still drop off. We're making some decisions later today, so.
Thank you. And that new hotel is not new to us.
Correct.
Thank you. Would be a third hearing. All right. Our first action item for the day, and in fact our only one, is a public hearing. It's quasi-judicial on 233 University Avenue, and the staff is asking for a recommendation on the applicant's request for approval of a major architectural review to allow for the seismic rehabilitation of an existing single-story structure, the addition of a second story for office use, and a rooftop terrace. Additional floor area would be added using a seismic floor area bonus and transferred development rights. The project includes alterations to the ground floor to revise the entrances, revisions to the walls along the interior and rear lot lines, and brick detailing. The project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act as infill development. The zoning district is CDC with a ground floor retail, I guess, and parking overlay, a pedestrian overlay, sorry. And the architect is Ken Hayes, and it's the Mills Family Trust is the owner. If we could hear from the staff.
Good morning, board members. Claire Hodgkins, project planner. The project before you today, as you noted, is 233 University Avenue, which is located on the corner of University and Ramona. The project actually includes 2 addresses, which is 233 and 235 University. As you noted, it's located within the CDC GFP zone district, which is commercial downtown community with a ground floor and pedestrian combining district. Existing uses of the site include the Mills Florist Shop, the tap room, and the hookah lounge. Just a brief overview of the project, again, of the different components. Rehabilitation of an existing brick masonry building to meet current seismic standards, use of seismic rehabilitation bonus, transferred development rights, and existing mezzanine floor area, which would be removed from the existing building, would be used to construct a new second floor office addition and an open terrace above the second floor. And it also includes addition of a trash enclosure on site, ADA compliance upgrades, and revisions to the facade on the ground floor to create more windows and to create an access to the office. So I just wanted to go through some of the key revisions that were made since the last hearing. The ARB had commented on the rear and interior sidewalls in particular. So they've revised the materials on the rear and the side wall partially to use some stucco and some of the metal to kind of break up that facade. And they've also added a few non-operable windows that would be fire safe. The ARB had also commented on the brick detailing. So they are going to be keeping the existing brick capitals that would be flanking the sides of the doors, as well as a kind of a brick trim to be added or retained on the top portion. There were some revisions to the retail entrances. The ARB had commented that they felt that the entrances should have been located closer to the corner of University and Ramona. The retail entrance along Ramona was moved slightly closer to the corner. Not quite as close as I think the ARB had commented on, but there were some grade separation issues that the architect has been trying to work around. So I just wanted to note that. There are two designs proposed. The applicant is proposing sliding doors for the retail doors along Ramona, but they've provided an alternative that would include doors that open up, swinging doors, which is what staff would recommend for the site. The ARB also recommended improvements to the pedestrian experience, and so there was a small addition of a seated bench within a window along Ramona. We did look into some benches along, adding a bench in the public right-of-way, but Transportation Division and Public Works Engineering had some resistance to that. They felt that this was not really the best location. There was a lot of different things going on in the right-of-way already, and they didn't feel that it was a wide enough right-of-way to be putting in benches within the public right-of-way. The street trees have also been revised. Originally, they were proposing to remove all 3 street trees. The mature street tree right at the corner of Ramona and University is now going to be retained, and they've proposed kind of some smaller, medium-sized trees for the 2 additional trees along Ramona, which staff felt was a better option that was more in line with the utilities in this area and would be more compatible. There was a question that came up about just what the office restrictions are in general in Palo Alto, so I wanted to provide some clarity about that. So there were 3 different restrictions. There are now 2 because the downtown cap has been removed. The downtown cap included all non-residential, not just office. The 2 that are remaining are the citywide limit on new office and R&D. This is adding 4,400 square feet of new office. There's somewhere around 500,000 or something square feet that can still be added. There's also an annual office limit. I think I noted in my last staff report there was somewhere around like 20,000 that was still available. And again, this is adding 4,400, so it wouldn't exceed any of those requirements. So staff recommends that the ARB consider the proposed project, provide comments, based on findings and subject to conditions of approval. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Like to hear from the applicant? You have 10 minutes once you're set up.
So on your screen, does that show up as a non-square? Or does it show up as a square? Square.
had this issue last time.
Yes, I remember. On Wednesday night, and the public display was really distorted vertically, so I had to ask the commissioners, and they said, "Oh, no, ours look fine." So, good morning, Chair Firth and members of the board. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be making the presentation on behalf of our clients, the Mills family. The Mills family joins us all this morning, as well as Terry Murphy from my office. So when we were here, well, let me just quickly show you the existing building that I'm sure you're very familiar with. We're proposing that this wall be removed. We're proposing that the brick veneer here be removed to reveal the former wall below, which you can see here in the bottom photograph. So we did a little more reconnaissance, and up in the attic, you actually can see the old brickwork from the inside. So you're looking out through what were the transom windows, and you can see the column capitals. I mean, it's basically like a cornice, a stepped out corbelling at the top of the columns. And so we're proposing that obviously remain, and that occurs along the front university facade for all three columns on flanking each of the two bays. The building is actually double wide. It includes the Rhodes facade there. At some point it was remodeled, I guess, by Burge Clark. So that's the existing. At our hearing in March, on March 7th, I can't believe it was that long ago, we talked the comments that Planner Hodgkins just discussed: improve the retail entry on Ramona, consider awnings along Ramona, consider exterior seats, consider additional brick detailing, provide more relief and variety along the property line walls next to the Stanford Theater. And I think that was also at the back of the building. I think staff did a great job already kind of showing you the changes a little bit, but this is the revised Ramona Street facade, and you can see here the idea of two sliding doors. So there is a grade issue. We are able to meet the grade on University and on Ramona in this bay. So basically you would walk right in from Ramona sidewalk at the same level as the interior of the store. As it goes this way, it climbs, the sidewalk climbs. As it goes this way, the sidewalk falls about 4 to 5 inches. So this is the sort of the natural place to put that opening. So we're showing sliding doors, so they would both slide open, or an alternate, and I rarely have an alternate for you, but an alternate would be in that same bay, do a pair of swinging doors. The swinging doors most likely need to swing out, so there's a bit of an impact to the plan that I'll show you a little bit later. We would define those entries by canopies. So this canopy was already shown previously at the office entry, but we would, taking kind of board member Hirsch's comment about adding some more canopies on Ramona, instead of doing it everywhere, just sort of wholesale, we said, let's just define the entry. So we provided at the entry itself. Staff explained that Public Works and Transportation they were not excited about a seat along Ramona in the right-of-way, so we've lowered the sill at the stair element where there's a deeper recess. I think it's about 16 or 18 inches deep, and now it's about 18 inches high, and there'd be a precast concrete slab there that would be seat height. So you could have a seat there by the office entry to wait for a coworker or what have you. Good. So at University, we're also proposing, now you can't walk out here because there's this 5-inch grade separation, but we think it would be nice to be able to see into the store. And so we're taking that sliding door concept, sort of like what we did at Hoya years ago. Those doors on the corner would slide open and stack over here. So the corner would be partially open, but there's a decorative metal rail to prevent people from walking in and out of that entrance. The entrance here remains. We show the brick detailing at the top of these columns that is existing, and then there's the existing frieze that we're then taking around the side of the building, and of course the existing cornice at the top of the brick wall. This is the side that faces the Stanford Theater. So previously we had it all as the metal, vertical metal panel. There was some concern about, I guess, the monotony of that. So we've just accentuated the stair elements both here and at the rear of the building. So the stair has the metal cladding on it, and it also has the higher height, whereas the stucco wall steps down the 2 feet in this area. And then we added fire barrier openings. As staff explained, non-operable fire barrier openings, but they do allow light into the stairwell, and they start to kind of break up that facade a little bit. Not much of it's visible from the street. And then a similar, this is the Stanford Theater, here. Our building stops right here. We have the door that comes out into this exit, hopefully easement, and the metal panel, again, defining the stair, and then we have that sitting on a concrete base that wraps around to the sill at the Ramona facade. And then in this location, we're able to get 2 windows in. Unlike the other location, you can only get 1 because of where the landings are and the building next door. And that is the presentation. Oh no, I'm sorry, there's a few more slides. So this is the ground floor with the sliding doors. So in this area, and if we do the swinging door, we need to set that in. So that would be an interruption, let's say, in the facade. But we could do swinging doors, can't swing over the property line, which is why we have to set it back. And then this just shows the window location, here, over in that stair, and then you see the canopies below in that area. And then the window here and the window there, and no other change. Just sort of an overall shot from there, the view that staff had, view from the street, so you see how this now breaks up. And then with and without the tree, so the camphor tree is, we've been requested to keep the camphor tree. So you can see the building, and so you can see the tree. and that's my presentation. I look forward to any questions you might have, and hopefully we have support of staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant before we start discussing this amongst ourselves?
Is there a material board again? I think
Yes,
it was
there
last
is.
time, right?
Oh, wow.
Peter, any questions?
I'd like to ask, what's your preference on?
The
Closer
sliding
to the
door.
mic?
The sliding doors.
Yeah, okay.
Peter, any questions?
Yes, Architect Hayes. What is the offset on the aluminum panel, the metal panels defining the stairwells on the inside, the sidewalls of the building between the plaster and the aluminum, or metal again, I'm saying? When you look at it from...
2 inches, it sounds like.
2 inches?
You're talking about this, between the stucco,
Yes.
Board Member Balte? Yeah, 2 inches.
Right there, between
Right,
those
yeah,
two materials.
correct.
There's 2 inches.
And
off-
this is not our building here, but right there, yeah.
Yeah, between those two materials.
Correct.
Thank you.
Excuse
The
me.
metal panel's proud.
I had two
Yes, thank you.
questions. One is, what's the width of the new bench, the new seating area?
Terry?
Length, width, whatever?
The width is 4.5 feet.
It is about 4.5 feet.
Thank you.
Enough for 2 people?
And, or 3 slender ones. And when you use the sliding doors, there's a column between the 2 of them as they open, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So
And so
that-
how
that-
wide is the entrance?
So that's about 4.5 feet.
Each.
Each panel's 4.5 feet. So I would envision both of those being open, so it's going to look like you have 9 feet. You can walk in, in
And if you
around
have
6 feet. On the
swinging doors, how big is the entrance?
6 feet.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think Board Member Hirsch had a question about, out of the 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, so out of the 2, the swinging door option and the sliding door option, which do you?
So we prefer the sliding door option. I think that if it's used properly, it'll I mean, the swinging doors are always going to open and close, most likely. The idea behind it is that we don't want, they could open it up so that they could have product displayed and you could walk in and around it. The swinging door option probably is not going to provide that.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. I think you
I
may
have
be
one
seated. You have one more, I'm sorry, Board Member Hirsch has one more question.
When you did your test from the inside, noting the corbelling, what was the condition of the brick on the inside?
So we have photographs. The brick on the inside looks fine. What we don't know, and Board Member Balte pointed this out last time, is that when we remove that veneer that the Mills family put up years ago, not sure what it's going to be. So we're hopeful. Yeah.
Yes, Board Member Balte, Vice Chair Balte.
Thank you, and Architect Hayes then. What is your backup plan if you take off the facing veneer and the brick behind it is
Don't
just
have a
not
backup
workable?
plan yet. Yeah.
So we're assuming this brick is going to be there and look beautiful and old and weathered
Correct.
and lovely, and if it comes off and the backup brick comes off too, what happens?
The backup
The
brick.
brick that we want to save.
Yeah.
If you're
So-
not able to save it, what happens?
Right. So the brick that's there is a double wythe wall, and so I wouldn't imagine it coming off when we pull the veneer off, but it might require removal of if there's a mortar bond there, or I don't know, maybe they built it as a cavity wall, Board Member, and it's not an issue, but we haven't done that investigation yet. I wouldn't anticipate that the bricks are going to come off.
Well, I mean more when you pull the facing brick off, the brick behind it may be damaged. The surface of the brick may come off. It may end up being
Chipped or something.
and
Right,
correct. The surface
Right.
behind the brick is not
Right.
the same thing. You can't.
So
leave
I think
weathering.
it depends on how, so the brick on the Ramona facade, when we take that, we're going to save that. Now, it's also double wythe, and so we're anticipating that given there's so much of it, that we'll be able to, when we build the new wall, that we'll have, extra brick to be able to make, pick and choose the bricks that we want to use there. But I mean, the brick that's on this building has gone through a number of recladdings over the years. I mean, the building was originally a stucco building. And so that cement plaster was chipped off. And if you look at the brick closely, you see the remains of that, that cement plaster that was on there. So I would anticipate you're going to get that same kind of modeled look. And so it might just be, it might be fine, right, in the end. We don't want it to look new, obviously.
Can you clarify for the record then, the intent is to remove brick from some parts of the building, the old brick, and clean it up enough that you can reuse the existing brick in other places?
Right,
So you're
correct.
going to go through
Yes.
the effort of cleaning the existing brick and reusing it?
So we're going to remove the brick that's there, and most likely the brick that faces the inside is, we know it's in better condition than the brick that faces the outside because it hasn't gone through that repeated, plastering and removal of the plaster. So we're going to take that brick and, divide it into piles of use this and don't use that.
And your
But
client
we're
is,
gonna-
your client is aware of the expense involved in doing that? Is that a yes or a no?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
He's not showing up for the record.
Sorry, I'll go like this. Thank you. Yeah.
I actually have one more question. Sorry.
Go ahead, Board Member Thompson.
On the elevation on Ramona,
sheet?
I'm actually looking at the rendering on sheet A4.1, which is the corner of University and Ramona. I think it's the one with the tree, no tree, but it's the SketchUp view.
Oh, the SketchUp view.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can see it in this elevation as well. But so there is corbelling at the top of the storefront. So on the university side, there's sort of two striations of corbelling
Right.
at the line of the storefront and then just above it. And then the one above it wraps around. But I noticed that on Ramona, the bottom line doesn't
Correct.
continue.
Correct.
Just wanted to ask your intention
So
in choosing that.
we're giving priority to the university facade, and it partially goes back to, we're not We're creating a new facade using recycled material, all right? This kind of goes to, Board Member Balte's comments about, false historicism last time. We're not trying
We're
to...
calling it recycling now.
Right, thank you. We're not trying to replicate it. I mean, this is a completely different design on this side of the building, and that's why we did not do the corbelling at that point. However, we felt it was important to bring the cornice around and the frieze around that side, and then just let the corbelling capital at the slender columns that are on University, that is existing as the detail.
So would you mind answering that again?
So the
Using different words. I always forget what
Okay, so the
corbelling
top-
is.
the
I know
top
what
of
a
the-
frieze is, I know.
Right, the top of the brick, we'll call that the cornice. So
All
we're going
right,
to wrap
it's the top edge.
that around, because I feel like that's important for sort of completion
And
of
this,
that
I can't
facade.
tell from looking at this drawing what the detail is there.
So it's a double step. So basically the brick sticks out about an inch and a half, then an inch and a half, and then the wall. And the same thing is true at the frieze. And so the frieze line is the next
horizontal
horizontal
band.
line down, right. And in fact, the corbelling is not, at the column capitals, is not unlike that as well. So there's no...
And a
there's no-
corbel is a decorative element that protrudes?
So at the top of the column, yeah, instead of having a,
Oh, it goes like that,
yeah.
at 45 degrees.
No, but it's
Yes.
it's corbelled though, Chair Firth, so it steps out.
Yes,
The existing steps out. It doesn't, it's not 45.
thank you.
I just
Yeah.
want to clarify, so when you say frieze, are you talking about the space between the two corbels?
Well, I'm talking about the frieze line, let's say, or if you want to call it the, architrave or whatever, but the horizontal line above the windows, about a foot above the windows, I'm just calling that the frieze line.
Okay, sorry, I just
The
wanted
one
to
that doesn't
clarify.
have a triumphal procession of Greek gods? I mean,
Right, that one.
I was going to say, I don't think I didn't
look
really
much
see a
like the
frieze.
Parthenon to
as
me.
such.
Sorry. Good questions.
You understand I'm working from art history rather than being a trained architect. All right. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're good. I'm sure we'll have more.
Thank you.
So before we start discussing, I went back and, since we were all reading the minutes of your last meeting, so we discussed the dimensions of the front window bays. Ozma had a concern about the relationship of the glossy aluminum panel and the brick. Peter had a concern about how the brick would actually be used. Room for street trees, the wall facing the Varsity Theater, the wall facing the alley, canopies on both frontages, whether the roof elevations were a bit random, the retail entry on Ramona, the detailing of the brick, the seating, and the need to keep the windows open, which Alex mentioned. Okay, and then staff, just to be clear, this is a building that is applying for a seismic bonus, so this has to be a rehabilitation rather than a demolition, and the walls to be retained as shown on sheet A10 are the interior wall facing the theater and the wall facing University, but not the wall facing Ramona.
Correct.
Thank you. That is a free, do whatever they want with that wall. Thank you. Who would like to begin?
Okay, I'll begin. So, in general, I think it's nice that you stuck to your original design intent with this update. And in general, I would say the design is looking cleaner and tightened and more intentional. With regard to the sliding door or the swing door, it is rather strange that there's a column in the middle of it, but ultimately, I don't have a preference one way or the other. I do, just looking at these images, trying to envision what it would look like if that second bay on Ramona was punched in a little deeper. It might break the rhythm. So at the moment, I think I'm leaning towards the sliding door option. That seems like the right thing to do here. Yeah, I do like the addition of the cement plaster. I think it does break up that wall a bit nicer. In general, I would say this is a good update. And I don't actually have that much more to say. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Alex?
I can recommend approval today. And then we get to findings. I have one minor comment on the findings.
Board Member Hirsch, David?
Well, I concur with fellow board members. I also concur with Vice Chair Balte's comment about the bricks, but I hear your sensitivity to it, so I think that you're going to be spending a little more time on it when you reveal it and find out what's there. In some ways, sometimes historic restorations, although a lot of the precedent here is not going to really be historic, but in some ways, sometimes less cleaning is better than too much cleaning, so whatever needs some sensitivity as to historic quality of what's there. I definitely prefer the sliding door. It's a narrow sidewalk, and it would be inviting, and it looks more like the front of the building where you also want to open up and have some interior-exterior relationship. So I come down strongly on your side on that one. And I think all of the other improvements that you made are definitely improvements. And I really don't have any problem with what's been done.
Anything else?
No.
Vice Chair Balte?
Okay, thank you. I'd like to focus on two things. One is the notion of whether it's falsely historic or not. I've been giving some thought to that because or at least I was at past hearings concerned about the reuse of the brick in a way that implies that this is an old brick building when it's not. And I firmly believe a lot of these bricks are going to be rebuilt, and this will very much be a new building. That said, as I've walked up and down University, I really tip my hat to the architect. I think this is actually a very deft example of historical, appropriate way to introduce a new building in the old. The new work here, the building up on the top, is clearly differentiated, and it's very different. And while the brick may be new, the massing of the building, the modulation along the street, the way it respects the historical nature of downtown University Avenue is actually very good. It really does tie right in. It fits with the old. It's part of the old, and it's not falsely historic. It's genuinely the way the retail avenue along University has been, and this helps continue that. And I actually find that makes it very definitely a historic rehabilitation in the first order. And it took me going out there several times to realize that it's not just the material. There's much deeper aspects to it. And so in that regard, I think the building really is very successful at putting something new on top of something historic. So I'm very pleased with that and can support it for that. I really leave it to the architect to decide if a door should be sliding or hinged. I can make the findings either way. With that, I'd like to segue into the second issue that I have, and I'd like to, I guess, set Win up to take it further, but it's really a shame that there's not more of a pedestrian amenity outside of this building on the corner. It's a very active street corner in Palo Alto, and I don't think that will change with this building. And there's just, right now, there's a tight sense about it. There's no place to sit or to stop or even a nicely landscaped little garden. If you think of the similar street corner up by Paris Baguette, they've got that little recessed bench area. There's frequently a guy playing a guitar at lunch there, and it's a more pleasant street corner somehow. It attracts pedestrians. People want to be there, and this is not doing that, and it's a shame. This seems like an opportunity with such a big project to ask the applicant to somehow provide some sort of pedestrian amenity on the corner, be it a recessed landscaped area or some benches or things like that. And I understand that the multitude of public departments within the city have issues with benches perhaps, or recesses or something, but I think it's fair to say, just to ask the applicant to figure it out, to go back to Public Works and find a place you can put a bench or 2 benches, and not just on a windowsill at the far back corner, but on the corner of the property where the people are, where there's a lot of activity. And so I'd like to see us as a board just push back on that some and not just accept the transportation department saying there's no room for a bench. I walked around there extensively, and there is room for benches. There is room to do things, and it's not expensive for the applicant, and now is the time for them to push to get this done. So I think we should be doing that. So, Wynn, your turn.
Yeah, we didn't disclose our most recent visits. We have all seen the site correctly, and Peter and I have walked up and down that block. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, staff, for the report. I think it's an attractive building. I don't think anybody's going to think it's old. I believe the applicant has choices on its materials, their materials on the Ramona side. I think if this is what they want to do, it's their building. Though I'm sure it doesn't feel like that when you are going through the review process. And I think it's handsome. One of the things that's concerned me a lot is whether this looks and reads to the person walking by as retail space. So I went and walked up and down University and the side streets some more, because the last time I really looked at this carefully, I was working for the city. We were working on historic issues on University, and the first version of retail we had on University, the windows went down to about, 36 inches. There was a vitrine above that, and the doorway was really strongly marked. So you were channeled into the doorway. If you look at more recent buildings, if you look at Keen's Shoes, for example, those buildings have floor-to-ceiling windows, and they've figured out how to use them as retail space in a way that's very engaging and inviting. And so this sort of transparent building is what's replaced our previous design. But as Alex pointed out in our last meeting, to make that work, the city has to insist that it stays transparent. One of the things it says in the downtown plan is that corners should be open. And so on a lot of our corners, that means the building is notched. The building is recessed from the corner so you get more space. But if it isn't that, at least you see through the glass from one frontage to the other. So as you walk around the corner, you see the people on the other side. Actually, I realized when I went and looked at Keen's more closely, they actually have what I think we call a vitrine. I'm not sure. They have an improvised display window where I think the backing is about 2 or 3 feet back, and it doesn't go floor to ceiling, so you can see around it, and there's things in front of it. So it's open, but it gives them more display space. So if we are to approve this, I would want to talk about a condition that would ensure that that happens. The other thing that has concerned me about, where's the sign? We had a signage exhibit somewhere, right? Because without signage, it really doesn't read retail.
We just have the boxes of generally the location.
I know, I'm sorry.
Huh?
What sheet are they?
Thank you.
A31.
A31.
Yeah. They're so subtle. I didn't use my magnifying glass. I looked at that. I thought that was a decorative brick element, a little brick diamond rather than a signage, rather than something that had 3 in it indicating sign. Thank you for that explanation. Okay. It actually exacerbates the problem with the door entry because nothing tells me where the door is. As I come into this retail space, you've got all these bays. I guess you're adding a canopy, and that's supposed to tell me where the door entry is. I guess I would think that the sign would be over the doorway as well. So those were my principal concerns. And I look to my colleagues to tell me whether they think those things have been addressed and if they think there's a condition that could help with the other. Okay, my next comment, thank you for adding the 4-foot bench over by the back entry to the theater. That would at least be a place for some of the workers who presently perch on the curb. But staff, I cannot share the view of city staff that there's no room for benches along this sidewalk. I know, I walked it a number of times. I thought about opening car doors. I thought about bicycle racks. I thought about utilities. I looked at all the access points, what we used to call manhole covers. I looked at the telecom facility sitting on the corner within 20 inches of the curb, if we're that worried about doors opening. And that's a prime place for a good bench. And I don't know what our ability is to force relocations of those things. It replaced an actual mailbox, didn't it?
I believe so. When I had originally asked Public Works about it, they said it's not moving. But,
It would have to be at our expense.
yeah,
Whose is it?
It's likely AT&T.
it's likely, yeah, AT&T.
Which is much harder to deal with than some of our people who don't have as many entitled rights. So they are doing some work on the sidewalk. What are they doing? What's the proposed change to the sidewalk conditions around here, around the building?
I know that the sidewalk is being repaved. There's grates being added around the trees, and then the improvements to the tree wells and like the soil volume underneath those. And then there's 2 new bicycle racks being added in the public right-of-way.
And those tree wells grates, are those the rubbery kind that we have along the railroad tracks, or are they steel, firm, or aluminum, or whatever? Can you stand on them?
My understanding was it was the, not the rubber grates, but yeah. I think it's this, I guess, I thought they were metal. My understanding was that they were metal.
I believe our current planning manager is indicating that that's correct.
Yes, most of the grates downtown are standardly metal grates.
So that they provide a better walking area.
Correct.
When I look at that sidewalk, other than the problem with the AT&T facility, which keeps you from opening a door, by the way, it just doesn't make any sense to me that there's no room. There are big tree well spaces, which at this point are just dirty holes in the sidewalk, all of which could accommodate benches that were designed to go in or around trees. And I think we should require it. And I think that I went back and looked at all the city documents, and I couldn't find the old section in SOFA 2, which talks about how much bench per frontage. But this is not, generally speaking, a narrow sidewalk. You have 8 feet plus in most areas, right?
About 8 feet, yeah.
That is narrow.
Yeah, but that's before you get to the street tree, right? Or 6 feet to the street tree? How many feet to the street tree? I'm sure the applicant knows.
I think it's 12-foot sidewalk.
I think it's 12, it's big. It's got four,
I mean,
it's got 4 blocks.
But
and
yeah,
two-
but 8 feet to the,
To the tree.
I think it's about
Well,
7 to 8 feet to the tree.
Right.
Yeah, but how far to the curb?
12.
12.
Yeah, it's not skinny. And I'm not arguing that you necessarily could put,
Clearly do a furniture zone.
pardon me?
We could clearly do a furniture zone.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I think we need, I think what happens is pedestrians become a very low priority. First we've got telecom facilities, then we've got car doors, and then we've got bike racks. Well, we have more people walking up and down that street than we have bicycling, and you shouldn't oppose bicycles and people and pedestrians. I mean, we're still people when we get on bikes. So I would like to add a condition for additional seating in the public right-of-way in a manner, on that block, in a manner acceptable to the city.
Yeah, so I think just to reiterate that we have talked to, Public Works and our Transportation Department. Claire's talked to them, and both of those departments have said that there is not sufficient room. So I think we would need at least some other options. We can certainly go back and talk to that staff and push on that issue a little bit more. We can see
And
about,
I'm not arguing it needs to be in front of this building either. That would be better, but I'm not saying it has to be. I'm talking
So-
about the half of the block between, the university word half of the block is what I'm thinking.
so you're talking about along University, or are we talking
I'm
about
talking
along?
about Ramona.
Okay, we're talking about along Ramona, this block of Ramona, but not
And I have
necessarily.
not actually focused on university. If there's good room there, fine, but it is more heavily used.
Yeah, I think some of our other parts of University have the bump outs where we have benches. We don't have that bump out here. But if you're asking for a bench along Ramona, we'd have to just take a closer look at it. We haven't looked at the rest of the block.
I'm asking for attractive seating
No,
along one of those brothers.
I understand, and we
Yeah.
certainly want to comply with that. We just don't have all the information, and the information that we do have is suggesting that we can't put a bench, at least in front of this business.
I would be happy if it was in front. I think it would be a significant improvement even if it were in front of an adjacent business. And perhaps, it would be helpful to have them come explain their thinking on this. I know it's a very complicated environment, and I respect their expertise. I'm not sure I'm in alignment with their priorities.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, potentially we can do subcommittee if other board members agree.
Let's hear from the applicant. Do you have any thoughts? I know you've looked at your own frontages and block.
Ken Hayes, we had proposed benches, and we talked with Planner Hodgkins, and she then reviewed that with Public Works, and they said no, so we took them off. So we thought that we could have benches. I think we flanked the tree, right, on Ramona, and we were in favor of that. So I think if you really studied it, there's probably room. It's just that I'm not sure that Public Works wants to get involved in that.
I think my concern
Well,
is
I'm
just...
suggesting they should.
I think my concern is just that I don't want to put a condition
Right.
of approval that the applicant is, not going to be able to comply with, because it's not planning that's going to be approving that. Public Works
I understand,
has
but
to
I don't
approve
want it to
that.
be a condition where they just say, it's optional, we say no, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
mean,
that's why the subcommittee, you would have a second chance. We could bring in, Public Works and Transportation to that subcommittee, and we could have a deeper conversation. And if you're convinced at that point that there's no room for it, then, the subcommittee could say that it's not needed.
We wouldn't say that it wasn't needed, we'd say it wasn't feasible.
Correct.
Well, I don't even know if I'm going to have 3 votes on my side, so let us go. Okay, anybody have any further questions or comments?
I had a quick question. It's about the rail. It's being called a cane rail at the corner.
Yeah, it's just a horizontal flat bar.
And there's sort of 3 tiers, it seems, 2 tiers. And what's the height of that with relationship to a pedestrian on the street? So I see there's a 4.5-inch grade change on that floor and the
Right.
sidewalk.
So it's about the 12 inches to the top of the rail from the interior floor.
So on the sidewalk, it would be like 16 inches?
On that corner, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We don't want someone to try to walk over it. The intent is to not allow people to walk in there, but to see product that's on display and feel like they can easily go in. Or if there's seating inside, like at Hoya, they'd be able to be connected to the sidewalk.
By code, do you have to go up to 27?
No, I mean, it just would, cane rail, basically. So as long as it's within the 27 inches and lower, the
Okay.
cane would pick it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, though.
Anybody else?
So I have a comment on the sidewalk and the bench issue. So, we've discussed this, I've been on the board for a long time, and this has come up on a lot of streets, including El Camino. And we've talked about it with urban designers with regard on our El Camino corridor plan. And those urban designers, their recommendation was if you want things like benches, that you need 15 feet of sidewalk area to get the trees, benches, bike racks, and all of that in there. And the thing is that we don't really have that with our 12 feet. And so I do not support putting a bench in the right-of-way.
Thank you.
I'd like to add my opinion to this. I think that walking on that street and going to the movie theater, it's always been a really significant corner. Now I think we can really kind of celebrate it. The uses are going to be vastly improved. And in respect to the entire University Avenue feel, I think it really is going to be significant to push hard for the benches and to push hard for a push-out, an urban design change at that corner. And if it doesn't work on University, maybe it could work around the corner. And I would advocate for getting together with transportation and pushing very hard to do a street improvement. I don't think in any way this is related to the building itself, because it's been an improvement already, so we can look forward to that happening. But I think it's a very, very significant corner, especially for pedestrians here. I want to note that bicyclists, are required to get off their bike on University anyhow. And so we should take extra look at the pedestrian at that corner. It's very, very busy almost all the time, and it will be more so when this is improved. And I'd like to celebrate that corner with a quality urban design improvement of the streetscape.
If you actually look at all of the blocks on University Avenue, you'll see that several of them have bump outs for pedestrian areas, and that was done on purpose back in the early 70s. And so we have bench and seating areas. They're not on every single corner, but they're actually there. But you need to really draw. I've actually drawn all the blocks downtown, and you can actually look and see where they're placed. But they did not put them on every corner, and maybe they should have, but they didn't. And it seems to me that you guys are asking for something that's beyond the scope of this project.
So I worked on the tail end of that project because it took a long time to get the art elements together, for example, and I agree, those are big engineered modifications of University Avenue. And I'm not asking for anything like that. I'm asking for respite. I'm asking for mobility. I'm asking for access. I agree that it's better to have a wider sidewalk, but we don't have a wider sidewalk. So it's either smaller benches, simpler benches. For all I know, they're backless benches with handrails, which let you get up and down when you're having difficulties. They can be the kind of subtle benches that architects are always proposing to us, horizontal spaces. But there's room for something that small, and there also are ones that are adapted to going around tree wells. We have these beautifully designed corners, and then we have corners like the corner of Nobu, where the sidewalk wasn't really up to the level of the improvement, and I want something simpler than those elaborate designs, and I do think it would be appropriate. Okay, would somebody like to make a motion? Oh, Alex, you said you had another condition you wanted to mention?
Oh, it was just findings.
The finding you wanted to mention. Sorry.
Related to conditions, I just wanted to clarify that for windows, condition number 20 on packet page 31, if you can review that for a second, I believe that addresses the concern of transparent windows.
So that says interior areas in front of first-story windows are to remain free of storage or other interior-focused elements. All ground floor windows should remain transparent to allow views into the tenant space, consistent with Palo Alto Municipal Code Section 18.30A055, In areas on the second floor where blinds are provided, all drapes, curtains, shutters, blinds, or other window coverings visible from the street shall be beige, white, or an off-white color, or lined in beige, white, or off-white unless otherwise approved by the Director of Planning. Any comments or opinions on that? I don't have any opinion on what color blinds they use upstairs. I think we hardly see them, but
I think I'm fine with it.
is the applicant fine with that?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
On the text supporting finding number 2, let's see, the top of page 23, at the end of the first paragraph, it says the proposed building also steps back to reducing the perceived height of the building from the pedestrian perspective along University. I think we should also say that there's a change in materials, which also supports that. I'd like to go on record supporting strongly the idea of getting benches of some kind. In order to make the contextual-based findings, one of the requirements is that the project promotes pedestrian walkability and connectivity through design elements. I think that's clearly what we're talking about here, and we're well within the scope, Alex, of requesting something. So I think our condition should be along the lines of providing at least 2 separate seating areas on the exterior of the building. It could be within the envelope of the building if the applicant is forced to make that work, but maybe that'll give them some incentive to push with Public Works. If they didn't agree with your drainage system, Architect Hayes, you would call them yourself rather than let Claire call them. And I'm sure you're very persuasive. Maybe you could lend a hand on this issue and try to find a place to get some seating on the outside of the building, either in the public right-of-way or within the envelope of your building. Say, cutting away that corner, which I'm sure you don't want to do, but I think we should condition it upon having at least 2 exterior seating areas.
Would anybody like to make a motion? Okay. I'm sure, incidentally, that the applicant and the applicant's architect are doing whatever they can to get this project to a place where they can proceed and get a good and wonderful building and environment. I move that we recommend approval of this project, subject to the findings and conditions set forth in the staff report, with the modification to the finding. Alex, what was your finding comment? Or did you have one? Did I get that?
So, well, it's just minor comments. Under finding 2,
Page, please.
page 22, it says the area is comprised of various commercial and residential buildings. I'm only aware of commercial buildings here.
This is true, so let's delete residential. I knew somebody was going to read this really carefully and thoughtfully.
Well, somebody has to read it, and it's always
Yes, they do.
been
We
the-
take turns.
It's usually the senior. Clara Malone Pritchard used to be the senior person, and she would read through them very carefully. So I'm taking up her role.
Thank you, we appreciate it. I tend to only read the ones I'm upset about.
On same finding, page 23, it says the proposed project is consistent with findings to provide high-quality materials and finishes in a neutral color palette. And I just want to say, like, the dark metal color is not really neutral, but it actually provides a design linkage to the Stanford Theater Annex,
You wanted
which
to
also
say a
has...
good color? What do you want to say instead of neutral?
Let's just say it's just like
just
strike
a-
neutral,
Okay.
right?
Perfect. That's on page 23.
Yeah,
Strike the whole thing, then strike in a neutral color.
yeah.
I think we strike the whole thing, right? We don't,
High-quality materials and finishes.
I don't think palette without neutral helps. Okay.
Well,
But
yeah, I think the colors are working with the neighbors, so anyway.
Suitable colors? It doesn't matter. Appropriate,
It's fine.
contextually appropriate colors. That's real garbagey. So I'm going to say contextually appropriate colors. That's why I use one word when 6 will do. Okay? Any others, Alex?
No.
Okay. And I am going to also recommend adding a condition that this be referred to subcommittee for review of the provision of 2 seating areas in the on the exterior of the building or in the public right-of-way. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? You are through with us. Thank you. Thank you very much for the project. We look forward to seeing it. I'm so glad that probably the building is not going to come down before you get to rebuild it. Been looking at that list for 20 years. I'm sure you have too. But I must say the nightlife provided by your tenants makes my walk home in the dark, feel more comforting because there's always somebody there. And I will miss the florist. Take care. All right, we have a couple of sets of minutes. And Claire, thank you very much for all your work on this project. Guess for the record, I should say Planner Hodgkins, but I don't seem to be able to manage that. All right. Minutes of March 7th. Any comments or corrections?
I emailed a correction just this morning.
Yeah, at one point it attributes a comment that I made to Board Member Thompson. I asked her what page of what sheet she was referencing. She didn't ask herself what sheet she was referencing.
Yes, we have that email, so we'll make that correction.
All right. Is there a motion? We were all there. Anybody can make this motion.
I move that we approve the minutes of March 7th.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Thompson, second by Hirsch to approve the minutes of March 7th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Board meeting minutes for March 21st, 2019. Any comments, corrections?
So we need to add on page 54, we need to add the action that the subcommittee made for 3200 El Camino, which is the Parmeny Hotel.
And what was that?
Yeah, I think we approved it. We looked at the material
Did you
samples.
make any changes?
But we should put that, like I was saying, that needs to be in the record.
Did you add additional conditions as part of that, or did you have different materials submitted?
Yeah, so I wasn't present at the subcommittee. Do you want us to bring those minutes back, or can the subcommittee recount, or?
No, I think, in my opinion, it's okay to just have the staff planner put down something, but I think it always should, at the minimum, it should say the subcommittee approved it.
And if they provided revised materials or plans, those should be noted in the minutes so that we know which version of the plans and materials.
Didn't you have the pink facade change? Remember we did the color on that one? Like
Yeah, we
the
looked at the
flaming
pink,
right?
yeah.
So it's kind of important to tell the
Looking
public.
forward to this building.
Yes, and so we do, staff normally does a summary memo at the end, and so it sounds like unfortunately
That
that
should be
language.
attached to the minutes, please.
Yeah, that language didn't get into the minutes.
If you would
so
attach
I'll-
it, that would be great.
I'll make sure.
Thank you.
And then on page 11 and 12, there's something that's confusing. I think I understand what happened, but I think item 3 is listed twice. And I think you actually did read the heading twice.
I read it wrong, yes.
But in the minutes, it looks really weird. So maybe we should just take one of them out, even if it
It's probably
actually happened.
accurate, but unnecessary.
Yeah. So it's item 3 on page 11 and 12.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve with the corrections noted?
I will move that we approve the minutes for March 21st, 2019.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion by Lou, second by Thompson to approve the minutes of March 21st. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Passes 5-0. We have no subcommittee items today, is that correct? There are no subcommittee items today. Board Member Liu, a report on the North Ventura Coordinated Area Plan.
Okay, so nothing's happened since the last ARB meeting, but the next meeting will be on May 22nd at 5:30 here in City Hall. They're 3 hours long. And the website for the project, there's a dedicated website, which is paloaltonvcap.org. And all of the materials for future meetings and past meetings are posted at that website.
Thank you. We don't have a draft letter of a report to City Council, so we will punt on that one. I wanted to report that I went to a meeting at the Mitchell Park Library, sponsored by the city, and is it Save Our Groundwater, Save Our Palo Alto Groundwater? At which Christine Litt, I better double check the name, but an engineering professor from the University of California made a presentation on adaptation to sea level rise, and I believe it's going to be posted on the city website, and I recommend it to everybody. Basically, she talked about how we might make an orderly retreat from the bay. And the two cities in the Bay Area that are going to be hit hardest by the first meter of sea level rise are San Rafael and Palo Alto, because we have the most low-lying land that isn't in wetlands. Good thing most of ours is in wetland. And that the line of retreat is probably 880 on the East Bay and 101 on our side. And that while the San Francisco Creek Joint Authority is working on thinking about levees, and I guess other groups are too, that her argument is that the levees could hold back salt water, seawater, but they also hold in groundwater and surface water, and that furthermore, the rise in sea level will lead to essentially the pushing up of groundwater and the raising of groundwater levels inboard. So that it's not, I don't think anybody ever thought that this was simple, but it's perhaps even less simple than we thought. And her recommendation is that we think about floodable development, which I'm sure we've all seen in various areas for these areas, and then she went on with some other, perhaps more visionary responses that were done. And her argument was that there are places such around the Bay which are very hard hit, which suffer from a lot of other disadvantages. And so while they might be eligible for funding from the Air Resources Board for global warming impact aid, they're not organized enough to take advantage of it at this point. Whereas we are not particularly eligible, but we've got hundreds of organized citizens really engaged in this issue, plus a very complex and I think pretty sophisticated city response. And it will be a couple of years before the city has its sea level rise reports together, but we are working on it. So her argument is, so Palo Alto's rich, Palo Alto's smart, Palo Alto's vulnerable, Palo Alto should go pioneer something. But meanwhile, we should have floodable development in these areas. So I recommend the...
What did she say about the Baylands? The whole park?
They're going to go under. And so that essentially that we need to retreat and that we can have development there that can accommodate being flooded from time to time. You know, she said she's worked in Japan where the airports float, or at least one does. She's worked in the Netherlands where they dug canals to absorb the extra water and piled it up nearby to provide some elevation. And she's worked in Venice. She said what they do is they just get flooded. They keep abandoning the lower floors of buildings. And that's one approach. And the flooding for a while will be intermittent. But it would suggest, as we learn from some of you don't put electrical facilities on the ground floor, certainly not in the sub-basement. You don't put the hospital infrastructure down at the bottom. You think about how do we retreat? She also had cheerful things to say about our practice of capping volatile organic compounds doesn't work so well when the water washes the cap away. But that's for another day. So her basic advice is that we need to look at those maps and face the fact that we're not talking distant future, we're talking near future. We're talking within the lives of the buildings that we're looking at. So our community public works director was there, the groundwater management person at the, what is it, Santa Clara County, what is it called? Water District? What is our big management?
There is
Valley
the
Water.
Santa Clara Valley Water District.
Santa Clara Valley Water District. They're all there, they're all working on it, and it's coming sooner than I might have thought.
Yeah.
So, but it's a very intelligent and interesting and engaged thing. She's a very entertaining speaker. I recommend the tape or the video.
So the event was co-sponsored by SAVE, Palo Alto's groundwater, and the city. And the guest speaker was Dr. Christina Hill from UC Berkeley. And there is a city webpage. If you just Google for Palo Alto sea level rise, there's a city webpage.
And next week on May 9th at Spur, the San Jose location, there's going to be a presentation on Palo Alto's housing crisis. And our planning director will be there, as well as Liz Niz and some members of Palo Alto Forward. This is the, Spur, which is San Francisco Planning Urban Research, has offices. They also have additional offices in Oakland and San Jose. So this is at the San Jose location at 6 o'clock on May 9th.
Thank you, Alex. How's the Los Angeles airport going?
It's going well.
Good. We're everywhere. All right, anything further before we adjourn?
I'd like to ask that we kind of, and I asked Jody to
Could you speak a little closer to the mic? David?
closer, yeah. Information on the small cells, the meeting that took place with City Council, and then the resolution that was passed by them. We should really have an updated copy of that. Also, it started out with Councilman Dubois, who said that he included the ARB in the requirements that as they move forward, and then it was eliminated. So I thought we should really have the whole process of that from beginning to end. Peter spoke at it, and but it sort of left it with us kind of not specifically in the picture, and I would prefer that somehow or other we get back in the picture somehow, if we can, because I think we add to the discussion on this quite considerably. So I've asked Jody to put together the paperwork that happened during that meeting and pass it along to all of us.
If you could just give us the links to the appropriate minutes, and also just maybe at our next meeting, let us know what the rules are now, and if there are proposals to continue to change them. Thank you. Thank you, David. Anything else? Well, it's 9:45, and we are adjourned.